All right. Larry, you want to advance just one to the title slide? Sweet. All good. If you just back one to the title slide. Sweet. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Ian with 3C Ren. I am located out of the county of Ventura, but I'm the program manager for our workforce education program, the building performance training program. I just have a few housekeeping slides to get us all settled, and then I'll hand things back off to Larry and Alex, and we'll get going this afternoon. Next slide, please. So just a little orientation. I think we all know how to behave on Zoom, but if you could just remain on mute throughout the training. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or more likely enter it in the chat, and we can answer them as they come up. There will also be some additional time at the end for Q&A if we want to have a dialogue about anything. Also, this session is recorded for our on-demand training page. So just noting that if you'd like to remain anonymous, just be sure to leave your camera off. I think that'll do it on this slide. Next slide, please. A couple click-throughs, sweet. So who are we? 3C Ren, we're the Tri-County Regional Energy Network. We're a collaborative partnership between SLO, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties, and to improve energy efficiency in the region. We offer customized programs for both building professionals and households. We're a ratepayer funded program, so these are dollars that we all pay into in our utility bills. And the benefit of being a ratepayer funded is that there's no cost to those we serve, and we're able to return these dollars back to our local economy. Next slide, please. Our three programs we're currently offering are our Energy Code Connect program, Building Performance Training program, and our Home Energy Savings program. With our Energy Code Connect program, we offer industry trainings, regional forums, and a Title 24 consultation service called the Energy Code Coach. I've listed our hotline phone number on the slide here. You can also submit an inquiry on our website. Our Building Performance Training program also offers industry training on technical and soft skills related to building science principles. Our goal here really is to bring industry recognized certification and training providers to the Central Coast. And lastly, our Home Energy Savings program, which serves households that are historically underserved with free and discounted home energy upgrades. You can visit our website to see our entire list of available incentives and our contractor directory. And I will enter our website in the chat here. And with that, I will hand things off to Larry Waters and Alex.
All right, thanks, Ian. Larry, do you want to come off of mute, and then we'll start with your intro slide?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. A little bit about this training that'll come up in a second, but I wanted to put my bona fides out there. I've been in the industry, in the HVAC industry, for about 40 years. If anybody's keeping track, that was before the invention of the first cordless drill. So yes, I am that old. NATE certified HVAC technician for 25 years. And I've had my BPI, Building Performance Institute, certification in building sciences since 2010. I've been only installing really efficient little heat pump systems since 2015, way before there was a push for electrification or decarbonization, just because they were super cool and better than furnaces then, and they're better than furnaces now. And I wanted to have a company that I knew who was calling wanted my services, so I started Electrify My Home in 2020. We are a very mission-driven organization. Our mission statement, see if you can see it there, provide the most efficient, cost-effective electrification solutions, be a good steward of the electrical panel, and train and influence other contractors to do the same. We also have a statewide training program that we do through Tech Clean California. That's a market transformation program to try to get people away from gas and into clean, environmentally friendly heat pump systems. And we just happen to do it really good, so they like us talking about it. The electrification, we're going to talk about the electrification backdrop. And for what you guys are here for today, the business case for solar contractors. And we're going to go into the introduction of good electrification. And good electrification is really, to sum it up, it's making sure we're being mindful of all the customers' electrification needs up front and making good decisions from front to back so that they can get as much of it done reasonably without causing any problems along the way. So the electrification backdrop here. This is not the first time that America has pushed for electrification. The first time was way back in 1956. GE and Westinghouse led the charge on this in the mid-50s. It was supported nationwide by 900 electric utilities and 180 electric manufacturers. And the only thing that stopped it in its tracks is back then, we were generating a lot of our electricity from imported fuel oil. And imported fuel oil, I don't know if any of you guys are old enough to know, this is actually before my time as well, but there was this thing called the oil embargo, and it got a little bit more difficult to get oil. So we went with something that we had, on came the natural gas movement. But this is not new to us. The policies and decisions that are leading this go all the way back to 1963, which happens to be the year I go back to as well. The U.S. Clean Air Act was amended and passed back then. In 1968, the California Air Resources Board was formed. And let's move forward all the way to 2006 when they passed AB 32, the Global Solutions Warming Act. And interestingly enough, that was passed by a Republican governor. So this is a nonpartisan kind of approach at making air cleaner. And in the Tri-County area down there, you guys probably have pretty decent clean air because you're close to the coast, but it's not more than a 40-minute drive over to Smog Central. So we really are looking at the total electrification and degasification as a way to clean the air in California. And I don't know if I have a slide in here, but an interesting note is of the top 8 dirtiest air cities, California is the proud owner of 5 of them. We are funded through our normal training program through all the way over here on the right is the SB 1477, which is the Technology and Equipment for Clean Heating Initiative. And we support that wholly. And we love working with those guys. So it's happening again. Building electrification is not going anywhere this time. It's written into a lot of different laws and measures and various different things that are pushing it forward. We passed the first building code that established pollution-free electric heat pumps as a baseline technology. So codes have been prioritizing electric solutions for a little while now, the past half dozen years anyway. We've been looking at this. Just a little while back, I guess this has been a year and a half now, but Governor Newsom and the California Energy Commission called for bold action, meaning 6 million heat pumps needed to be installed by 2030, which is really pushing us forward now. California is banning natural gas furnaces and heaters by 2030. It's really important that we address this with well thought out electric sensible replacements. And just recently, the air quality, the CARB Resources Board in the Bay Area actually sped up that process a little bit. And we're going to be getting rid of gas water heaters by 2027 and gas furnaces by 2029. So we are pushing forward on electrification like never before. It's a great time to get involved with it. Up to date, 77 cities in California, including a few in your area, have adopted building codes to phase out gas in new construction and some major remodel construction, which was kind of started by Berkeley a number of years ago, and has grown ever since. We need to get a few more down here where all the smog is. So the tide was turning for a while, but it has full on turned in the HVAC industry. And we're going to talk quite a bit about heat pumps and HVAC and opportunities for solar contractors to move into this arena. But last year, heat pumps finally outsold furnaces. And this is across the whole country. This is everywhere. And this is an important turn, because heat pumps used to be just something that the guy on the outside of town had because he couldn't get gas to his house. And now we have better technology with heat pumps than we do with gas systems. And so we can far outperform with all electric than we can with gas. So it's a great time to move on because we have the technology behind us to back us up. So why do we want to electrify? Oh, there's some pretty good reasons around this. Building and transportation electrification is a big deal towards our low carbon future. It's not just a technological shift, it's a societal shift towards cleaner air and more sustainable appliances. Building and transportation electrification will help reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and create a more resilient energy system. And the big deal is electrification is the future of energy. It's not just about replacing fossil fuels with renewables. It's about creating new business models, new products, and new markets. This is a quote from Jigar Shah. He is a very influential fund guy who helps fund large projects and solar projects, etc. And he is really in tune to the entire kind of financial side of this whole thing. But it just goes to prove we're going places with electrification that I don't think we ever really thought even a number of years ago. When I was installing just heat pumps back 15 years ago, or excuse me, back in 2015, to replace gas furnaces, it's just because I could put in really great systems that used less energy and they were more comfortable to live with. But now we've got a push behind us. So it's a great opportunity. Our favorite benefits of correctly designed electrification upgrades. A little bit about my company. We only do electrification. We are kind of a spin-off of a traditional HVAC company. We do electrical upgrades. We install heat pumps for comfort and hot water. We run the circuitry to the additional appliances in the house so the homeowners are ready to upgrade their other gas loads at their leisure. And what we love about heat pumps now are these 5 things we talk about. Is way better comfort. We can create a comfortable home that nobody has ever experienced before. Until somebody has lived with a properly sized, properly engineered heat pump system in their home, they never really experienced true comfort. So true comfort is same temperature from room to room, the freedom to run around in your underwear, and maybe not everybody in the family would be comfortable if you did that, but quiet operation. Our systems are generally inaudible. They're environmentally friendly, obviously, way safer because we're removing combustion appliances and potential gas leaks from homes. And because they run longer, we have the ability to really beef up indoor air quality by introducing indoor air quality products like filtration and ultraviolet lighting technology and things like that. So taking advantage of those longer run times with a properly installed system can really increase indoor air quality, but so does getting rid of all the nasty gas stuff from the house. So the business case here for solar contractors, there's been some changes in the solar industry lately. I don't have to tell you guys that. 90% of California homes rely on gas for space heat or water heating. 11.7 million California homes are out there ripe for the pickings. 12 million houses in California with gas or electric resistance water heaters. Those are ripe for the replacement to heat pump water heaters. And 93% of the single family homes in California still have gas as its domestic hot water heating. And there's 3.4 million homes in California with no air conditioning. So we all understand grid challenges as we hear about safety shutoffs and things that are because of fires in the state. But we also hear about our grid maybe not tolerating high loads and getting notices to turn things off. When we add 3.4 million new air conditioners in California, it's really important that these are done properly and have the right type of backup energy so that we don't create a massive problem on the grid, which is where Electrify My Home comes in. With our engineered systems we install use a fraction of the energy of a traditional heat pump system. Natural gas breakdown in California. So you can see 96% of all the gas used in California for homes is for heating. And then a very close second is water heating. Cooking is a pretty good fraction, but then clothes drying is another big one. These are the four biggies in most houses that we look at. Depending on the vintage of the homes, they might be all gas or just have the gas water heater and gas furnace. But either way, a big market to tap into. We're doing this all over the world. This is some energy bill savings in percentage for households with different power in Germany, Spain, and Italy. The rest of the world is pretty far ahead of us. If you can see by this graph, if we connect solar or combine solar PV with a heat pump, our energy savings are dramatic over just a heat pump or just solar. So having these two be universally thought of as a whole house approach to good electrification is extremely, extremely important. This is why the relationship from solar companies, you should have a relationship with a really good heating and air conditioning company, and one that's focused on heat pumps, not one that's got 100 years of a gas heating experience, but ones that have jumped full into heat pumps and understand them and their design. Why is it important now? The electrification movement is incredibly important to people's businesses because it's being forecast as an additional $5 billion home upgrade business. So there has not been a push in California like this before, where there is legislation and timelines behind these upgrades. It's, people can remodel their homes and put in a new bathroom and kitchen, but there's nothing that is pushing them towards that other than just a desire for a better bathroom and kitchen. But timing is everything. This is a perfect storm of opportunity. We're on the forefront of this business. There's 10,492 HVAC businesses in California, so a lot of people to partner with. And you can position yourself as a pioneer and corner the market in its infancy right now. There's still plenty of time for experts to emerge in this fast moving time. And it's a great opportunity to get out there and do this stuff right. The incentive programs that are coming down the pike now are just amazing, as far as offsetting equipment costs and installation costs for the consumers, especially with the new IRA that's popping up and kind of coming to fruition over time here. And then market entry is super easy in this because there are few people. There's a lot of people talking about it, but there's few people talking about it intelligently. So natural gas is no longer a good investment, and this should really make solar contractors feel pretty good. We've always had this thing in the back of our minds when we're sizing solar, and I've sold a lot of kilowatts of solar over my time. And there's always been this challenge of how much do I add for heat pumps? What do we look for? And is this customer ever going to convert? We know now that the customers are going to be converting away from gas over time. So it's a great opportunity to get into this. Gas costs are going up. Any of you folks out there have a high gas bill this year? I can only imagine. Furnaces are costing more to operate. It's costing more to be comfortable, and people are sacrificing their comfort just to make ends meet. So it's really driving a opportunity, not only when you include the incentives, but just from the high cost of fuel. And we found out this year that fuel costs can really rise quickly, and a lot of things in the world can cause those to rise. Gas prices do come down in the summertime, mostly because there's less demand, but they will shoot back up in the wintertime. And just like gasoline prices, we have now set a new standard for high prices with gas. And that means that we can always bump up to the bottom of that price without being the most expensive ever. But we experience the most expensive ever. So it's not going to be long till that resets itself too. So there's a new top and a new bottom for gas, and it's just no longer a good investment in especially home heating and water heating. Experts agree that gas prices could fully quadruple within the next decade. Now, this slide is from the early part of this decade. So back in 2018 and 2019, when a lot of this was coming together, the experts were saying, by 2030, we will see gas prices that are 4 times higher. Last year, we saw them rise 2.5 times in 1 year, and they've settled back down a bit, but that top is going to be higher and higher. You can never offset a gas bill with a solar panel. So it's easy to talk to customers about getting into heat pumps now, because we do have the ability to offset these things with our own energy generation. And for those of you that don't know, gas costs are carried, the cost of ownership of the gas system, which is aging and needs a lot of repair. There's a lot of leaks in our gas system. And the cost of maintaining that is actually built into the therm of gas that you buy. And as more and more people electrify, that cost is going to be shared over fewer and fewer therms. So the actual maintenance and upkeep costs will be added into that. So it will almost feel like an artificial increase in cost, but it's just part of the process that's coming on when fewer and fewer people are buying therms of gas. Gas systems will be a liability when selling your house. Currently, if you get an appraisal on your house or you go to sell your house, you have to declare a few things. You have to declare if you have asbestos or lead paint. The time is coming when you'll have to declare that you have gas heating systems in your home. And then you will be entering into some sort of a negotiation upon closing of the house of how are we going to, mitigate this new problem when selling the house. We work closely with some of the local governments, and currently one of the cities in the Bay Area is setting up a program where you will have to replace, on selling the house, you will have to sell the house with either a heat pump water heater or a central heat pump as part of the transition of the home ownership. So a lot of things are moving here. The EPA announced last year that they will no longer label any gas appliances as Energy Star most efficient, even if it's the most efficient in its lineup. We're no longer looking at gas as an efficient option. Just last year, I mean, everybody here's probably experienced that high gas bill. I didn't, because I have an all-electric home. My home was built in 1978. It was not all electric. When I moved into it 27 years ago, I transitioned everything from electric to gas. I put in gas for my range, I put in gas for my dryer, and I already had a gas water heater and furnace, because at that time gas was a less expensive option, and we just didn't know as much about it as we do now. But over the last 3 years, I've transitioned everything in my house back to electric. And I am sure glad I did. My house is incredibly comfortable. So offering electrification measures to your customers, especially if you're a solar contractor, you guys have spent a lot of marketing dollars harvesting customers out there and building relationships with customers that have these solar systems in their homes now. You can restart these relationships and help recoup the efforts of previous marketing just going through your existing customer base. When you have the opportunity to call up a customer and say, Mrs. Jones, we are now offering electric solutions that complement the solar we installed 2 years ago. Would you be interested? If they've had a high gas bill, you better be darn right they're going to be interested in replacing that. This is a new type of project, so it's new opportunity for lifelong customers. Electrification opens the door for new measures like EV charging, electric panel upgrades, including smart panels, appliance wiring, heat pumps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My particular house, I have 2 heat pump systems. I have a wall-mounted heat pump for my garage, so I can cool and heat my garage, and a heat pump water heater. I do not have a heat pump dryer. I have a regular dryer, and then a heat pump in my home as well, and a induction range. All of those appliances took circuitry, and all of them were, if it wasn't my house, I would have paid retail. So it's a great new product category for those customers that were sold out. If you're a solar contractor, you have a portfolio of products that you can sell to the customer. Now we can open that portfolio, and if you can do high efficiency or smart panel upgrades or car chargers, it's going to be a great new financial opportunity. Public sector investment is getting really big. There's a lot of money being spent to advertise to consumers and homeowners regarding electrifying their homes, the benefits of doing such. I've been seeing a lot of the switches on ads on Instagram and Facebook lately, which is really great. And they've got some pretty nice, clever marketing tools that are available. But the switches on is also, if you include heat pumps, if you're licensed to, or you get a partnership going with an HVAC company, we want to make sure that that HVAC company is registered on the switches on. They've got a really good contractor finder tool on there that works by zip code. It also, by zip code, will tell you all of the incentives that are available in your area. One of the cool incentives that we like now is the California Energy Smart Homes rebate. And that's if you replace the last gas appliance in your house, it's a $5,500 additional rebate this year. And so when people are waiting on budget to get that induction range installed as their last electrical thing, that $5,500 rebate will pay for the electrical and the range in most cases. So it's easy to get the customer to go to the next step with this. And we know, as you guys know, as solar people, we can offset electric appliances with solar, and the heat pump water heaters are something that we do a lot of. These, for those of you that don't know what these are, this is a tank water heating system that uses electric elements, but it also has a refrigerator-sized refrigeration system on the top of it that basically grabs the warm heat, or grabs the heat from the ambient air surrounding it, pulls the heat out, and transfers it down to the water. It does this for about as much energy as a decent refrigerator uses in a year. Most heat pump water heaters, even in colder climates or installed in a garage where it tends to get pretty cold in the winter, they can easily be offset with less than 750 watts of solar. So That used to be, when I put this slide together, 350 watt 2 panels, but most everybody's doing 400s and 410s now. So a solar panel and a half to offset water heating costs forever is a great value proposition. For those of you that don't know what the duck curve is, so the duck curve is something you might or might not have heard about, but the duck curve is really the reason behind the NIM 3, the justification for NIM 3. And I know if you're in the solar business, you're probably thinking there is no justification to kind of shutting off the pipeline for people to have cheap, clean energy. But this is what's really going on. This is a graph of the energy use scale. And what we see here is if we look at the timeline, in the mornings, our homes are using quite a bit of energy, and full demand in 2030. This is our full energy demand in 2030. And then we have right at 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, when all the solar panels start kicking in, we have a massive amount of power comes onto the grid that is way more than we're actually using. So this is how much we need, and this is how much we're generating. And this is through rooftop solar, solar farms, whatever. And we got to the point this year where the third Sunday in April, where we actually produced more energy than the complete demand. And this is the point where there's nothing to do with this energy. It's just there. And so in order to not cause this problem to be larger, they've come out with NIM 3, which is basically you need to get a battery and store your own power so you can use it here. Because what happens at 4:30 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon is, as the solar panels start dropping out, we have this massive glut of energy that we have to recoup. And they're doing this using a lot of imports, some wind, hopefully the wind's blowing, some hydro, and a lot of gas peaker plants and other energy sources to bring everything back online. What we want to do is smooth this out and move our loads around. So smart electrification can help us move some of these loads around. If we have heat pump water heaters and we program them to run between these hours, we can utilize some of this energy that's here during the day that's now being kind of overproduced, and we can smooth this out by not running it during times when the power is expensive. So this is why we have time of use programs. It costs a lot more to get power going right here than it does down here because there's so much. So anything that we can shift load here, including the batteries you guys are installing, and we're drawing off that solar through here with our battery, and then we can smooth it out over here. So, and you can see it's gotten more and more and more energy on the grid every year. So we have all this excess energy we need to do something with. So this brings forward a opportunity for innovation as well. Like preheating water, pre-cooling your home. So the way we do our houses is we tighten up the house a little bit, we make it more efficient, and we put in these heat pumps that use a tiny bit of energy once the house is warm or cool. And so we're using a tiny bit of energy throughout the day because our houses are acting as a thermal storage battery. We can also do smart car charging. If we happen to have our cars plugged in during the day, it's a lot better time to charge our cars during the day or late at night after the 9 o'clock rush. Battery integrated stoves are coming. So battery integrated stoves are pretty cool too. They will charge during the day and they plug into a traditional 115 volt outlet. They charge a battery internally, and anything that stove needs over that normal kitchen circuit plug is provided by the internal battery. These batteries on these things are very innovative as well. They will also let you, if there's a power failure, they'll let you run an extension cord over and run your refrigerator off the stove. So at least you can keep your house cooking while the power is down. So a few potential new pathways with electrification and solar businesses is new electrification service ideas. These are some of the things that we implement in our business that can be done without having to install systems. But electrification road mapping, I would recommend that you would do some sort of a process where when you make these calls or even offering to your pre-existing customers an electrification roadmap, and basically go out and inventory all the gas loads, look at the potential savings by switching them over to electric, and then potentially adding more solar if necessary. It's a good business proposition for adding a battery at that point. Doing safety assessments, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Gas appliances are generally not that safe. A lot of people use gas appliances every day with no problems. But there are a lot of houses out there that have problems with venting and other problems with gas appliances that they do not even know exist. So discovering these things during a safety assessment can bring in a lot of dollars fixing these problems as well. Panel assessments. So electric panel assessments pre-electrification. So going out and doing a panel load calculation and finding out how much more capacity is available, what we can switch to smarter loads. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Pre-wiring for the stoves and dryers is a big business. That sometimes adds $35,000 to $4,000 onto a project of ours. It's good business, and it gets the customer ready to upgrade those to electric at their own schedule. Cross-selling and referring to a C20 contractor. There's a lot of C20 contractors. That's a HVAC contractor. You build a relationship with an HVAC contractor. You get them trained up in doing good heat pumps. Work with them on that. Work together, and you guys are in the house already talking to the customer. Bring in that C20 and get that work done. It's an important thing that needs to be done. It'll also give you a better idea of how much energy these systems actually use. And the other is resilience planning. Help the customers design a resilience plan, like what's going to happen when the power fails and those batteries come up. Maybe they want to install a very energy efficient small heating and cooling system in one room of the house. We do quite a few of those. Building the roadmap, a gas assessment and inventory. So look at those current electric and gas bills, find that gas usage. In PG&E territory, their program makes it really easy. Do a home energy checkup online on their website, or do a home intel report. You're welcome to do it through our website if you'd like, but a home intel report will give the customers a good idea of when they're using energy and what they're using and how to save energy. This can be priceless when you're going in and selling a battery or a solar and backup plan. Build a list of gas appliances in the house. Look for the furnaces, the water heaters, stoves, dryers, fireplaces, and pool heaters. List those things out as gas loads, as potential electric upgrade loads, and then make the suggestions for panel upgrades if necessary. There's a lot of opportunity here. Building that electrification roadmap. There's 8 low-hanging fruit items in most homes in California, as we saw by the statistics a minute ago. These are some of the pathways we take our customers down, which is LED lighting is a first low-hanging fruit for most customers to reduce energy use. It's surprising still how many people haven't done this. Induction cooktops, whether it be a portable model that you could place right on top of the gas or an actual plug-in range, those are $2,800 in their kind of investment. A heat pump HVAC system that will replace both the gas furnace and the air conditioner. It can deliver heating and cooling up to 3 times more efficiently than a traditional furnace. That's a nice price tag. Heat pump water heaters. Heat pump water heaters are a great income source. They're a nice little easy job that can be done in one day. The benefits of doing them are quick and easy to turn around, and the customers see the benefits right away. Obviously, the solar PV that you guys install a lot of generates clean electricity to offset things, update the electrical panel if necessary, install that battery storage. And then number 8, when it's right for a customer, recommend that they replace their gas dryer with a heat pump dryer. Might not have known that there are these things that exist called heat pump dryers, and they're an electric unit. They don't need venting, and they use the same heat pump cycle that the heat pump water heater uses to dry the clothes. Now, if you have a family of 4 that's doing 20 loads of laundry a week, this might not be the best solution for them, but it is good for those people that really want to get in there and save energy and are deliberate about it. Safety assessments. So if you don't have somebody on board, get somebody NGAT or BPI certified, or find a company that does this and go to training. Send somebody in your company, send your salespeople to training, and see these potential danger problems that exist with gas appliances and point those out to the consumers. There's the 3 biggies are carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide, however, does not happen just because there's multiple things that have to happen to a gas system in order to create carbon monoxide. Be careful how you talk about that. But gas leaks and pressure problems within the house can cause real problems with gas appliances. As you see this picture up here of this water heater, actually, this is from a problem called rollout. And this is actually when the flames from the burner are rolling out into the room and coming up and burning the sheet metal on here. And this happens a lot of times when we have pressure problems within the house. The pressure problems are generally caused by big exhaust fans or kitchen hoods or something like that that creates a negative pressure in the house. And then in order to satisfy that negative pressure, oftentimes the air is pulled down through the water heater flue pipe. And as air is being pulled down into the room because of a negative pressure, sometimes it's just a dryer, that can cause the flames to actually roll out of here because there's nowhere for the exhaust and the flame to go because there's air coming down through the flue pipe. So these are all important. This one down here, this is the top of a water heater. And this is really just an example of why Home Depot should not sell water heaters to civilians. Because exhaust gases have to travel out via gravity. They're not under any kind of pressure. So trying to have one go through a roller coaster where it's going downhill, this is never going to vent. All the exhaust in this house was coming into the house just because a homeowner came up with an idea that he wanted to do this himself. Additionally, safety assessments would be looking for asbestos in the home. Looking for mold and organic growth around the water appliances. This was a job we did recently in a water heater closet. And this water heater was actually dripping water into the burner compartment for a long time. And when the burner was on, it would actually vaporize that water and turn into steam. And this whole cabinet, this whole closet was just kind of being inundated with steam, and it got absorbed into the drywall and created a real mold problem. This is definitely a good example of why a heat pump water heater would be better. You get rid of all of the problems that create this when you do a heat pump water heater. Rodent infiltration into insulation. I know as solar people, you're maybe not paying that much attention to insulation, but as a building science guy, we always lived kind of by the moniker, we reduce before we produce. In other words, we make the house as efficient as possible before we start putting up renewable energy so that we're not putting up additional energy that we don't need, which is really exacerbating the problem with the duct curve. Wiring hazards in the attic space, problematic, and ventilation issues in the house are also something you want to pay a lot of attention to. Electrical panel assessments. This is a nice add-along service that you can perform pretty easily. When you're making that gas inventory, Figure out the new load that's going to be created by changing out those appliances with the electric, and figure out what that's going to do to your electrical panel. It's important to know what the incoming service level of the system is. If it's a 100-amp panel, sometimes the wires are big enough to put in 125. We know that the utility companies are not necessarily being friendly with us about upgrading panels as easily as we used to. Figure out the main panel rated amps, look at the panel age, look for evidence of burning and arcing, and is there physical space and capacity space within the system? And we know in order to determine capacity, we're not looking at all the breakers full. We're looking at the actual National Electric Code load calculations to find out if there's more space available on that panel. Just because it's full of breakers does not mean it's at capacity. So outcomes of this exercise would be planning a panel upgrade or avoiding a panel upgrade. But now we have to plan them out. We can't get a panel upgraded in 2 weeks like we used to be able to do. It's become a little troublesome and nuisance. And then additional attention to the efficiency to minimize loads. We call this the Watt diet. And it's choosing appliances that use less energy, like going from a gas water heater instead of going to a traditional, or excuse me, from a gas dryer. Instead of going to a traditional electric dryer, we could use a heat pump dryer, which uses half of the amount of power. There's several strategies around that. And then figuring out if we need to pre-wire different things in the house. Pre-wire to be electric ready. Like I said, this is a nice addition to your bottom line. This will, I mean, you got your truck out there already. Most of you solar guys out there can install an electrical circuit. And most consumers want to replace these appliances on burnout. So they can get a nice new electric range if that plug is already back there. So start with the water heater location. If you're doing solar now, look if they've got an old gas water heater. Recommend that, hey, heat pump water heaters are coming. When you replace this gas water heater, chances are they might not be available anymore if it's after 2027 in the Bay Area or 2029 statewide. Run that electrical circuit over to them so they don't have to go 2 weeks without hot water to find an electrician and a heat pump water heater installer. The oven, stove, and range, another big one. Sometimes you can open up a can of worms when you have a stove on an island in a kitchen with a concrete foundation or a slab. That can get a little bit pricey. That's something that needs to be planned out. Running it to the clothes dryer or the EV charger is a good idea as well. I don't know how many solar contractors out there actually have in-house HVAC. I know some of the companies do this. But when we're adding AC, or I hear an ad on the radio a lot for a solar company, and that's actually on Facebook that I see it. And they're talking about gas furnace and air conditioner installation with their solar, which just means they haven't really thought things out very far, right? So they're really looking at the HVAC as a quick turnaround, additional product, when they could be installing a heat pump at the same time and working all that out and get rid of that gas appliance. So when you're in the house, ask simple consultative questions, build a referral plan, get a relationship going with an HVAC contractor, work with quality HVAC contractors that understand heat pump technology enough to know how to downsize and install the right equipment for the lowest operating cost, which also means fewer solar panels to replace it. And remember, if you bring in an HVAC contractor and they don't do a good job and you referred them, the negative energy is still going to be on y'all. Resilience planning. So we do quite a few of these, and we do these on houses with batteries and generators and in areas where people are concerned with the power going out. But if you're not already installing batteries as a solar company, I imagine NIM3 is driving you there. But they have these mini split systems that are cooling and heating systems. They're a one-room solution but they're only 110 volt and they're very low energy systems. So we can install these on houses that have batteries and generators, and we can run them when the rest of the house is dark. So very good for older folks that don't want to take the risk of not having heating or cooling while the power's out. And at least they'll have one room as kind of a refuge. And you're going to become the hero when you offer something like this, because you can't honestly say that a traditional air conditioning system is going to run very long on batteries very efficiently and not understand the implications of how much energy that system uses and the condition of the house. So if you're putting batteries in and wanting to back up an old air conditioning system in a house that's not well insulated and the power goes out when it is really hot outside, it's not going to take long for that old clunky air conditioner to deplete those batteries and then create not too happy customers. So this is a nice solution for those situations. As you can see here, the input power on these things is, when it's running at minimum output, it's 0.24 kilowatts. That's 240 volts this thing is, or excuse me, 240 watts this thing is using. On a 10 kilowatt battery, that can go a long ways, obviously. It's 1.44 at max output. So this thing will give you, this particular unit will give you a lot of cooling capacity. But when we use one of these, it cools or heats the room quickly, and then it slows way down to its slowest point. So somebody could cool a room down and keep it cool or keep it warm using a very low amount of energy off the batteries. So here's what we do a lot. We preach this thing called good electrification. And good electrification is just understanding the customer's entire electrification journey from the start and not making recommendations that are going to cause them problems down the line. And we use the lady in the boat as the metaphor for that. The lady in the boat is taking things at your own pace. And so our company, we will electrify a house over time, or we'll do it all at once. And taking things at your own pace where people can afford to do it to their houses is an important thing too. That pre-wiring really comes into good electrification. But what is it? Good electrification, it should be part of anyone's vernacular when they're doing electrification upgrades on a house, especially with the HVAC heat pump systems. Installing the most efficient solutions should be the biggest thing that you shoot for. We install these cool little inverter heat pump systems that use a tiny bit of energy once the house is cool or warm, versus a traditional heat pump system that can take up to 6 breaker spaces, might need supplemental heating for a cold night. Those are energy guzzlers, and those are not good electrification. We try to use the existing infrastructure wherever possible. We electrify a lot of houses on 100 amp panels. We're able to do that by using low energy solutions and just smart techniques and processes around sharing circuits and things like that. And like we've said multiple times here, consider all the electrification requirements from the start. The reason we talk about this is every year we run into customers that got the wrong heat pump solution up front, and the HVAC contractor told them they needed an upgraded panel. And then we come in to do the rest of the electrification, and the contractor just upgraded the panel enough to fit their breakers in, maybe went from 100 to 125 and put 60 amps worth of load in there. And now the customer needs to upgrade again when they're going to the stove or the water heater. So we need to be careful about that. Consider all those requirements from the start. Our average system that we install in a typical 1,500 square foot house needs 120 amp breaker to run the entire system. One circuit goes to the outside, and the outside powers the inside. Be a good steward of the electrical panel. Direct the customer in the best way possible. There's an impact that's made, and I understand when we're installing solar and to get a big enough solar system on, sometimes we need to upgrade panels, other than when we're just doing electrification. That's not lost on me. But having the most efficient solution available and being a good steward of the customer's electrical panel is huge. What I tell my customers all the time is let's do your electrification upgrades now on your existing 100 amp panel. We can do that. And let's let the solar and battery guy tell us what size system we need, what size electrical panel we need when that's time. Now, you guys are the solar and battery experts, so rolling it all into one, but it's still a good idea to make sure that we're using the lowest energy products available so it keeps the homeowner's costs all the way down. Especially now that we're going to be adding batteries to every equation, the cost of these systems are going up, payback period is further. So now if you can offer a completely clean and resilient home that includes safety, because safety was never a conversation with the solar people that put my stuff up 15 years ago. It just wasn't part of the equation. But now having that as part of what you can talk about is huge. Every homeowner's journey is unique. We like to help people along at their own pace, but definitely nudge them to make good decisions to optimize things like incentives. So we avoid panel changes until necessary. We've electrified complete houses on 100 amps that are probably never going to get solar. But because we did it with low energy appliances, their utility bills are not that bad. They're less than they were when they were using gas heat. So they're happy with that. And they still have that same that 100 amp panel. They didn't need a panel upgrade, so they didn't cause impact in the neighborhood by getting a larger panel that wasn't required. Most houses converting from gas will need at least 2 to 6 spaces with a heat pump. This is the big deal right here. A poorly designed or poorly kind of spec'd out heat pump system. And we know we do a lot of training. We've brought over 100 HVAC contractors to our training in the last year and a half, more than 200 individuals. And there are a lot of companies out there that are offering the low price heat pump solution, which is just basically an inefficient air conditioner by today's standards that runs backwards in the winter to give you heat, but loses a lot of its capacity when it gets cold outside. So they have to add additional capacity by adding like a strip heating system, a kilowatt heater, and then that takes additional breaker space. Those also need an additional 220 volt breaker in most cases ran to the air handler. So it's not uncommon for us to see heat pump systems out there that are using 6 spaces and that require about 60 amps of power be qualified into that load. So dryer is going to take 2, the hot water will need 2. Those heat pump water heaters are also available in 115 volt plug-in where you can just plug it into the wall. They don't have efficiencies that are going to get them a lot of the incentives that are available. And there's also 15 amp 230 volt models available that have smaller backup heaters. And then range spaces, we're going to need a 50 amp for that range. And if they've got a cooktop and an oven separate, we have to think about that. And then the EV charger, 2 spaces, or maybe we share a circuit, something like that. So a lot of additional capacity needs to be added in. If we do this smart, it has less impact. So we see a couple of breaker panels here. And the question we ask is, are these panels full? And the question is maybe or maybe not. We don't know. But just looking at this, the panel here on the left only has really a couple of 20 or 240 volt loads, like 3. One of them looks like it might be the AC, and the other one here is a solar. They've got a dryer. And then they've got a bunch of 110 volt light and plug circuit loads. Chances are, if this is a 100 amp panel, this is not a full to capacity panel. This one over here is even better. Like they've got a lot of space in here, but not a lot of space for new breakers. But what can we do to make this work? We could add different circuitry. We'll get up to that in a second. Full panels. It's important that we understand a 100 amp panel at 240 volts is 24,000 watts of continuous power. So we can add up a lot of electrical loads and never hit 24,000 watts of electrical or continuous power. If we have a 200 amp panel, if we come across a house that already has a 200 amp panel, that's like a luxury for us. It's like driving a luxury car. We don't have to do other things to kind of to stretch the capacity in the system. But what we do know is that most of the houses in California never use more than 88 amps. So we don't know the electrical panel size in this study, but this was 22,000 homes across California. And they looked at them and they found that 98% of these houses had a peak power of less than 88 amps. So most of these houses, and some of these are going to be all electric homes, are not exceeding that 24,000 watts. And there's still plenty of room to add more. 86% of the houses in this study were less than 50 amps ever. It's 48% of them used less than 30 amps ever. There's a lot of room here to add loads in these systems. Wonder what this guy was doing. One homeowner had a peak power of 329 amps. I'll let your imaginations run away with you with what that guy might have been doing in his basement. But there's a lot of unused capacity for electrification without a panel upgrade. Now there's ways to get around this as well. Talk about it in a minute. If we look at this slide, the kilowatt distribution between electric and gas customers is not that different. So if we look at SMUD mixed fuel or all electric customers, the all electric consumers are actually having a little bit less load. So for reference, 20 kilowatts at 83 amps is where most of them peak out. So if we want to take this same electrical panel, and I see now down here that they have a bedroom mini split. I never noticed that before. Let me see what the circuit size on this is. 20. So they have a bedroom mini split, they have an AC, they have a dryer, and they have the solar that was installed. This is obviously a 20 amp solar breaker, it looks like. So it's not, sorry, I need glasses for everything these days. 20 amp, that's part of that getting in the trade before the first cordless drill. 20 amp solar, you guys could answer that question. That's probably under 4 kilowatts. But there's room in here. So what do we do if we want to add a heat pump water heater circuit to this panel? So the first thing we would probably do is quad it out. We'd take that dryer outlet out, or that dryer breaker out, and put a 30-30 quad in there. Or we could use a circuit splitter. For you guys that don't know about these, circuit splitters are amazing devices. This is one right here. What this device does is it allows you to plug it into the dryer outlet. It allows you to plug the dryer in one side, and we use these a lot for heat pump water heaters. So we'll plug the heat pump water heater in the other side. And what happens is one side takes precedent over the other. It gives a little bit of power to run the controls on both appliances, but as soon as one pulls peak load, it shuts off the load to the other side. So with this scenario, we can heat water with our heat pump dryer or our heat pump water heater anytime we're not using the dryer. As soon as the dryer turns on, it just takes power, turns it off to the heat pump water heater, dries the clothes, goes back to heating the water. So this is a great solution. This is very similar. This is called the Dryer Buddy. And this is basically one of these with a meter on it that tells you where the power is going. And then we have the Simple Switch. The Simple Switch is a really cool hardwired product like this. And it allows us to run one circuit into here and then 2 circuits out. We do some of these with range circuits. So we'll have the range 50 amp range circuit going in, have the 50 amp wire going to the range, and we'll have the secondary circuit going to the electric car charger. And as long as they're not baking cookies or making dinner, the car can charge. But as soon as they're done baking cookies or making dinner, the car will start charging again. So it's a nice flawless piece of technology that we can take up less space in the breaker panel with and create enough energy to run 2 220-volt loads. Here's a couple more. You could add a sub panel. We do this quite often. We never do it above capacity. We always run the right size wire, and we always run a neutral to these things so that because you know when a homeowner sees this thing in his basement and he goes, man, I've been wanting to put some basement lighting in, I want to put a table saw in, I'm going to get some really cool stuff for my basement, and they're going to tap into this. If those are 110-volt loads and you didn't add a neutral, it's going to be a shocking experience for them. So always want to add the neutral to the sub panels. It's code anyway, unless you mark it as a 220-volt only load panel. How about a smart panel? Anybody understand what smart panels are? So smart panels, I'm getting one of these installed in my house in a few weeks. I'm super excited about it. But a smart panel, there's a couple more options other than this now, but Span is really the guy that came onto the scene first, and they are a smart panel with just regular dumb breakers. And so all of the technology in this allows you to access all your circuits right on your cell phone and set up priority and precedent for all different loads. So if you're running close to maximum capacity and you have a car charger, if you have a Span car charger with this, it'll actually throttle down the Span car charger when you get up near peak capacity. If you set it up with precedent, if you turn on, like if I turn on my garage heat pump, it'll just turn off the dryer, or however you have it set up, whatever works. So the Span panels are really cool, and they're adding more and more kind of software to the technology all the time. But the brain is kind of built into this unit, and it has a switching mechanism for every single breaker. This is a Leviton panel. This is a dumb panel with smart breakers. And these breakers are all going to kind of feed into a hub and have a similar experience as the Span. But on this one, the panel's cheap and the breakers are expensive. This one, the panel's expensive and the breakers are cheap. So, but the Span looks better. It's much cooler. Another thing you can offer is sub-circuit energy monitoring. A lot of you guys are probably doing this if you're in the solar side now. Like I know that a lot of solar guys are installing the curb systems or one of the others. But this is a nice little safety backup system that you can install for people so they can keep an eye on what their energy use is and get an idea how they want to manipulate the loads, or just, you know, it's kind of cool just to know how much energy your son's computer is using. I was surprised to find out how much my son's computer was using. But I actually have the curb system on my house. I have a Tesla battery. I have a micro inverter solar system that's about 10 years old and 7 years old, respectively. I added more panels as I electrified more things in my home. And I have the in-phase monitoring system. I have the Tesla battery monitoring system, and they're both good at telling me where the energy is flowing. But the curb is actually great at telling me where the energy is going, what I'm using. And I was able to establish that we live in Vacaville, it's kind of hot up here, that when I replaced my existing air conditioner with my new heat pump system uses less energy over the entire year than my old air conditioner was using, just keeping my house uncomfortable in the summer. And when I mean uncomfortable, it was always freezing cold in my house. Now it's perfect throughout the entire house. Another one is the Emporia. As a company, we install a lot of Emporia systems. We have a little contractor dashboard where we can look and kind of see what our systems out in the field are doing, which is really good information to have. But also allows the customers to have a little better eye on what's going on. So we talked a little bit earlier about the watt diet. Let me just do a time check real quick. Okay. We talked a little earlier about the watt diet. And so if we look at some things like standard versus efficient on a couple of different systems, if we put in a standard dryer, we need 5,280 watts for those, pretty much average. If we put an efficient dryer in, like a heat pump dryer, we can get that load down to 2,200 watts. When we're figuring in our loads, when we're doing our panel load calculation, all of these cuts really help. If I use an energy efficient dishwasher over a standard dishwasher, I'm using 300 less watts here. My heat pump, a traditional heat pump with heat strips that are being installed every day, everywhere, those systems can use 9,220 watts when that heat pump is running and the heater strip kicks in. That's a ton of power that you have to account for in the system. If we put in a really good inverter heat pump system, we're running down around 3,500 watts. So once again, I can calculate this in as my load for the HVAC system as long as I downsize my breakers. Heat pump water heaters, we can do a 30 amp or a 15 amp or even now 110 volt plug-in, but that's going from 4,500 watts for a 30 amp to 2,200 watts for a 15 amp. So if we just did these measures in the average home, we're saving 11,400 watts off this system. all that we can use for something else or not use at all. So real quickly, common heat pump technologies in residential applications. We have the unitary systems. We call these the on and offs. These are traditional units. A lot of times they're going to be 1 or 2 stages, and otherwise they'll run in low and high. Some of them will, a lot of them won't. These are going to have base efficiencies, and where you're going to have colder winter climates that you often get below 40 degrees temperature in the winter, like on the winter nights. Most of the time, those are going to need some sort of a backup heating source, because heat pumps lose their efficiency when it gets cold outside. It's a refrigeration cycle, and when the air coming into the heat pump is too cold, the unit can't give you the amount of heat out the other side. So there's a couple things that contractors that install a lot of these do. They either oversize them, so when it gets cold, they still have plenty of capacity, which means they're grossly oversized for when it's mild outside, or they have to put in a backup heating strip or connect it to another furnace. See that a lot too, which is not good electrification. Or we have inverter modulation systems. And these systems are a little bit different, where they're not on and off. These systems will run a little bit longer, and they use energy differently. They take power from the wall, they convert it from AC to DC, and then they back invert it internally to an AC 3-phase power. That AC 3-phase power has the ability to exist or run outside the normal 60 hertz electrical range. So it can ramp up, it can speed up. So when it gets cold outside, it just speeds up. And a lot of times these things are fully operational at full capacity, all the way down below 17 degrees, sometimes all the way down to 5 degrees. So if it gets below 5 degrees in the Tri-County area down there, we have other problems we need to worry about. And if it gets below 5 degrees down there and your customer has any heat left in there, they're going to still be happy. So you're going to find these mostly in mini split technology, ductless like this, or ducted, and then they also have multi-zone. They also have a new type of product out there. It's called a pressure sensing inverter, and it still has some variability in its capacity, but what it's doing is it's sensing the temperature of the air moving through the system by the refrigerant pressure, and then when it gets close to what it thinks is when the house gets cool, it just slows the outdoor unit down. It does not have the communicating capabilities of one of these type of systems. But those are also better options than traditional unitary on and off system. So traditional heat pumps, where we're running an air conditioner, the larger they are, the more they're going to turn on and off. So a typical scenario is you walk into your house, it's 80 degrees, you want to cool it off a little bit to 75. This system is going to use a ton of energy to start, sometimes 75 or 80 amps. You guys know that you're installing batteries out there. You're probably putting soft starts on here, which is reducing that capacity down to 40 amps around. But that still is taking a toll on the battery storage, right? If you're running off batteries and you're starting something that uses 40 amps, even if it's just inrush current, that could be a problem. And then they use a lot of energy running until they get the house colder than they want it to be. And then they shut off, and then they let the house get warm again. So this is not good building science or energy science here. We don't want to cool the house off and let it get warm again, because we're just going to use a bunch of energy to cool it back down again and keep this on and off scenario going. This is really wasteful on energy, and it uses a lot of energy to start. It also limits your comfort in the house, because you spend a lot of time around comfort zone, but you never really spend a lot of time at comfort zone. So if we think about that, it's basically like having a bunch of stop signs on the highway, and where you have to turn your car all the way off and start it all the way up again. It's not good science. That's why now we have cars that turn themselves on and off by themselves. And you guys already have stop signs on the highway. It's called Southern California traffic. But do we really want it to be that way if we don't have to choose it? With inverter technology, it solves a bunch of problems, right? We talked about it earlier. It's 2 breakers versus 6 breakers. It's lower capacity. It's quieter. It's more environmentally friendly. But just how it works with comfort is pretty dramatic. So we have the same scenario. Our house is 80 degrees. That means everything in the house is 80 degrees. Your furniture, your walls, your doors, your windows, your countertops, everything's 80 degrees. You want it to be 75 degrees. So instead of starting up with a lot of energy, this unit starts from a single rotation and slowly ramps up. And once it establishes the revolution and the movement of the refrigerant through the system and the pressure difference is low, then it ramps itself up. It starts speeding up and it takes care of this temperature change in the room pretty quickly. But instead of offshooting or passing the set point temperature, it gets down to set point and it slows down. And so what we see here in these little hills here is the cool air going into the house and the furniture and everything in the house releasing its heat to the cooler air, and the thermostat responding with small changes in the capacity just to overcome those little balances in temperature as everything in the house is getting to temperature. And so we call this the tempering phase. And when we get done with the tempering phase is the point where everything in the house is 75. All the walls, floors, doors, and countertops, everything is now 75 degrees. And then the unit slows down even further. And this is what we call the thermal equilibrium stage. And once our house is at thermal equilibrium, it starts acting as its own storage battery. And so our house is on storage battery. And so if it runs for hours and hours and hours on this thermal balance point versus a few hours at this, it's going to use far less energy here. Typically, on a house that we do that's under 1,500 square feet, this is going to be slightly more than a hairdryer on high speed, depending on how good of a hairdryer you have at your house, about 1,850 to 2,000 watts. And down here, it's going to be using 250 to 300 watts. And if we just do the math really quickly on this, I can run this system for 6 hours in this for every 1 hour of trying to get the house warm or cool. So with a properly installed heat pump system, it's going to take less toll on your battery, less toll on the solar, and less needed solar overall. So when you combine a solar and battery project with one of these systems, you can actually save the customer a couple dollars on that part, and then switch them over to a system that's going to more efficiently utilize that power that you're generating and storing. But to install inverter heat pumps, you have to find a contractor. If you're an HVAC licensed contractor and solar now, learn to do load calcs. Load calcs are extremely important when we're sizing heat pumps more than ever. Old furnaces have a lot of waste heat. They have a lot of capacity and they heat the house up really quick. People don't notice the inefficiencies in the house when you're blowing hundreds of thousands or thousands of BTUs into the house at one time. So when we install a heat pump, it's going to be a smaller system. And when we install a properly sized, good electrification, install small inverter heat pump, it's going to be much less capacity. So what we want to do is some things in the house to make it a little bit more efficient. This is a house up in Fairfield, California. It gets pretty hot. I think the design temperature is 99 degrees and or 97, somewhere in there. And we designed these systems to keep the house 75 degrees in the summer and 70 degrees in the winter. And when we slide all this information in, we go measure all the rooms, all the windows, look at the insulation, kind of slide it all into this program. The program takes a little bit of time to get used to when you're first starting it, but once you've done 10 or 15 of them, it's super easy clockwork. But what you notice here is these two bedrooms, they're both 9 foot by 10 foot. This is how much airflow they need. CFM means cubic feet per minute of air. A cubic foot of air is about a basketball size air. And so this room here needs 31 basketballs of air every minute. And this room here needs 48 basketballs of air every minute. The reason for that, even though they're both the same size room, is this room has double exposure. It's exposed to 2 outside walls. This particular house that we did, we installed R48 insulation, or excuse me, R49 insulation in the attic. And then they had new windows installed when we put this in. The system we took out of here was 3 times larger than what we ended up putting back. This is a 1,500 square foot house with 18,000, 1.5 tons of cooling and heating in it. But those 1.5 ton units can do way more than that because they're inverters, so they can ramp up. But want to make sure you're doing load calculations with these. How can we downsize a system? We can downsize a system by understanding what thermal impacts different things in the house have. And if you ever go into a house or you own a house that has ductwork in the attic and it's not very good ductwork, or it doesn't have insulation over it, or your insulation in the attic isn't very good, we can calculate this out. And the way that we do this, and I'm going to kind of flash through this, but you'll be able to see this on the video. If we look at the average, a BPI standard, Building Performance Institute standard, is internal surface area of the ductwork equals between 0.38 and 0.42 of the square footage of the house. So in other words, what I mean is if I have a 1,000 square foot house, we look at it as there's about 400 square feet of internal duct surface area in that house. And if it's all in the attic, we can calculate this really easily. So what we do is we take the square footage of the house times 0.4, that gives us our total internal duct surface area. We take the temperature difference of the attic and the air going through the duct. And if we have our house set at 75, our air going through the ductwork should be around 55. If the system is pulling in 75-degree air and it's operating properly, it should be giving you 55-degree air out. When that 55-degree air blows into hot ductwork in the attic, the ductwork sucks a lot of the cooling energy out of it, and it often delivers air that's much warmer on the other end, and that's what this is figuring out. So if we just look at and you guys in the solar business running wires through attics, you know it gets a lot warmer than 125. So these are pretty conservative numbers. If we take a 125-degree attic, we have 55-degree air coming through the register, or coming through into the ductwork. That's a 70-degree temperature differential. And then we determine the R value of the ductwork. Real easy. If it's metal ductwork and it's got yellow insulation wrapping around it, it's R3. If it's got asbestos wrapped around it, it's typically around R3. If it's like this picture and it has no insulation around it, it's R0. This particular part was a lot of raw sheet metal in the attic acting as a air reheater, and then it was going into a little bit more insulated duct. So the way we do the math, we take that 1,500 square foot home, we got 125, got our 70-degree temperature differential, R3 insulation. Take 1,500 and times it by 0.4, and then we times that by the temperature difference, and then we divide that by the R value of the ductwork, and that tells us exactly how much energy our system is utilizing to keep those ducts neutral in the attic space. So this particular scenario, this system is using 14,000 BTUs of its cooling capacity to keep those ducts neutral when the attic is only 125 degrees. That, if we take that and we put new ductwork in and we clean it up, we put it down low, and then we bury that ductwork with insulation, or if we simply seal this ductwork up really well and wrap it with a little bit of insulation and bury it with blown-in insulation, our losses go down to 1,400 BTUs. So basically what we've saved here is over 1 ton of cooling capacity. So if I have this 1,500 square foot house that typically would have like a 3-ton air conditioner, I've just made it into a 2-ton by just burying the ductwork and sealing the ductwork up. There's a secondary benefit to that. What about the benefit of installing the insulation in the attic? So when we install the insulation in the attic, that also reduces radiation on the ceiling, which will also, in this particular scenario, reduce by 1/2 ton per hour of heat that's being radiated into the house. So just by doing this measure alone in a house like this, we can reduce the capacity of the system by half. So I don't have to feel nervous putting a half-size system in here if I've taken care of these basic things. So it seems like we rolled around to the end here. If we have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
All right, haven't seen any in the chat, but if folks have questions, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute.
All right, we must have either given way more information than people could digest, or we answered every question along the way. All right, well, we're pushing for time. Give it 1 more minute for questions. All right, well, I hope this was successful and you learned something. We are available for consultation. If you're looking for a good contractor to deal with, if you're a solar contractor and you're looking for a good HVAC contractor, give us a call. We'll tell you the questions you should ask. If you are already dealing with an HVAC contractor as a solar contractor, ask your guys to go through our training. We will be doing a training this fall coming in your area. And it's a 3-day immersive training to show contractors how to implement and execute these principles. And there's a lot of help after that too for them. So if you want to get them bumped up a little bit and you want to really make an impact on electrification in California, doing it properly and thinking it through from the beginning is really, really important. All right.
Kevin, in addition to that, 3C Ren has a lot of great resources. Larry, do you want to move forward to the next slide? And then Ian, if you want to close this out.
Yeah, of course. Perfect. Thank you, guys. So we had some learning units available for today. If there are any questions surrounding learning units, feel free to reach out. I will share the slides, the recording of this, and a survey to your inbox probably tomorrow or Friday. But any other resources, any other questions, feel free to either reach out to me directly or Larry or Alex. We can share some contact information in that email follow-up. And then just a quick highlight for some upcoming events. We just finalized our Q3 and Q4 course calendar. So tons of events through the summer and fall available for registration. And then some additional links there below for our Energy Code Coach and our contractor enrollment form for our home energy savings program. With that, if there are no questions, we can close it out, and thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.